Welcome back to Daniology. This is episode number 76. This one's called Do I Stay Church of Christ? This is based off of a book by Brian McLaren called Do I Stay Christian? And by the way, this is an article as well as an audio, as you can tell, and it's found on danielr.net. You can share it with your friends. It'll contain both the audio as well as the transcript of the podcast. So, as I'm reading Brian McLaren's newest book, Do I Stay Christian?, I found it helpful to replace Christian with Church of Christ at times to make the book even more relevant to my current stage in my faith journey. I know that this new question, do I stay Church of Christ, is one that many members and ministers are experiencing now. Many who are 5th, 6th, or 7th generation members and beyond of the Churches of Christ are asking this very question every Saturday evening as they pick out their clothes for church the next day, write sermons, prepare Bible class lessons, and reflect on yet another sermon that can't be complete without talking bad about another denomination. Many are tired of seeing yet another lectureship announcement with ladies only beside some of the speakers. Many are tired of hearing sermon after sermon on instrumental music, baptism, and traditions. On the flip side, there are others who find themselves tired of hearing sermons and reading articles like mine, those that attempt to deconstruct much of what I was raised with. They think, man, can't we just move on? And wonder why there are even those who are still of the old mindset. For many, this question is very personal because of how their answer could affect their families, their churches, their groups of friends. Let's remember to be gracious to one another regardless of how we struggle with and answer this question. If you're reading this article or listening to this podcast as a critic, I just request one thing. Please understand that those who ask these questions, including myself, love our heritage. We wouldn't be thinking twice if we didn't. In Do I Stay Christian?, Brian suggests summarizing or journaling each chapter to make it applicable to one's own life. I've done this myself, and I want to share a few of the things I've come up with. To keep things short, I'll only share 2 no's and 2 yeses, whereas Brian shares, 10 to 13. So start with the no, the I can't take it anymore. Option 1 or idea 1 or answer 1, reason 1, because the Church of Christ has been vicious to its fellow Christians. There are 2 questions every member of the Church of Christ has gotten. Number 1, are you the ones who don't have music? And number 2, are you the ones who think you're the only ones going to heaven? Despite scruples about the word music, the answer to the first question is yes. Everyone knows that what they really mean is instruments. The same is true when someone asks me if I'm a pastor. My answer used to be something like, well, technically I'm a minister because I don't meet the qualifications for a pastor, some big explanation. Now I just say, yeah, that's me. Now, the answer to the second question is also yes, if we're being honest. But 29-year-old Daniel, 20-year-old Daniel might respond, I believe that God is the judge, and that whoever is baptized the right way, worships the right way, and who believes the right things is going to heaven. This, of course, is just saying yes with more steps. Unless, of course, there's some magical tribe in some remote location who happens to believe exactly like we do, then everyone else is going to hell. Which is of course what the person is really asking. Do you believe I'm going to hell for not being a member of the Church of Christ? And for most of my life, the answer would be yes. This stigma alone is enough to justify anyone changing the name on their building or moving to a different denomination altogether. Answer or reason number 2, because of the Church of Christ's suppression of dissent. Brian McLaren says this. Historically, the term heretic empowers those who apply it and disempowers those to whom it is applied. Labeling someone heretic or apostate, we might say a digressive change agent or false teacher, made almost any cruelty possible. I've personally been guilty of using this language to dehumanize other believers, and I know this language has been used in reference to myself as well. I've had friends who talked like this concerning other Christians, and when I spoke out against it, I was called soft or wishy-washy or postmodern. The use of these terms by well-meaning Christians and elderships have led to many good men and women losing their jobs in ministry, not being able to find other work, losing friends, losing family, and losing a safe place to worship God. One minister I heard said that those who did not agree with him on how to interpret Revelation should be isolated, made to feel alone, and not even be allowed to say a prayer. Friends on social media have also felt cast aside by their alma mater because of similar statements which used exclusive, condemning language. This habit of dehumanizing those who disagree is a very good reason to leave. No wonder so many have found more generous communities. I could talk more about the racist history of the Church of Christ, its lack of transformation, how it treats women, or many of the other no answers Brian gives. But I'll let you read those sections of the book and find your own similarities. Let's move to the word yes. This is the idea that the movement is redeemable. Here's the first yes reason: because leaving hurts allies and helps their opponents. In this chapter, Brian talks about a young man named Seth who laments that so many were leaving organized Christianity. He says, but I just wish there was someone left to appreciate the breakthroughs that are happening. Seth goes on to say, I just feel like people are quitting the marathon when they're only a couple of 100 yards from the finish line, and every person who quits makes it a little harder for those of us who are still running the race. First, let me say that if you are leaning no or have already answered no, then I totally understand. In fact, my answer was no as well until I found the church I'm currently at. Now it's just yes on the good days. Regardless of how you answer this question, I have zero doubts I can still work alongside you toward a greater world through our mutual love of God and neighbor. But this reason is one of the major ones which makes me personally lean towards yes. I know so many ministers who are good friends of mine that are currently working as change agents in their congregation. One friend recently told me one of our couples started attending another church, which makes sense for them logistically, but we need them if we're going to keep going the direction we are. I've had similar conversations with many other ministers, and each one makes me want to keep running the race, even if it sometimes feels like I'm on a treadmill. Before you leave whatever church you're at, why not talk to the minister and see if he is having his own suspicions about our traditions? It may be that he, saying or she here makes no sense, you dig, feels alone, and that there is nobody else who is seeing what he is. If he calls you a false teacher or something, then you have my permission to leave, as if you need it anyways. Of course, leaving or staying compliantly are not your only options. Brian offers a third choice. He says, we can leave defiantly, shaking our fist as we go, or we can stay with a good-natured but firm defiance, determined to keep our integrity and speak our truth as best we can, as long as we can, from the outside edge of the inside, staying centered in genuine humility and love. If you can do this, then hey, keep it up, more power to you. But if you're tired, worn down, and need to say no, then do what you have to do. Again, I'm there a lot myself. Here's another yes reason: because of our legendary founders. In his book, Brian talks about Christianity's legendary founder, Jesus. The Church of Christ, which has its genesis in the Stone Campbell movement, has a birth date of August 17, 1889. While Christianity began in the first century, the Church of Christ as we know it today is a modern invention with its style of worship, organization, and doctrines. But those two names, Stone and Campbell, refer to two men who had a vision for the church which is similar to my own. In my major paper called In Opinion's Liberty, which is linked in the article, I talk about how the Church of Christ has its beginnings as an ecumenical unity movement, despite its later narrower-than-narrow view of itself. These men were able to work together despite differences of opinion concerning atonement theory and even their view of the Trinity, or, lack thereof. While they had their faults, as every person does, they serve as role models for what a unity movement can look like. While it is true that their teachings were rooted in modernity, they had a prophetic voice which envisioned a world where Christians were united, not unified. It'd be a shame to surrender their movement to people who have lost the true restoration plea. How? How to answer this question, regardless of how you answer it, whether yes or no. So I won't say much on this point, which is the last section of Brian's book, but regardless of your answer, stay humble, walk a path of love, tolerance, understanding, sympathy, and graciousness. This does not mean that you have to stay silent, compliant, or submissive. Unfortunately, because of our culture, we often equate saying anything negative at all concerning our traditions with hostility towards our heritage and ancestors within it, living or passed on. But this is a tool used to quiet those who have serious and genuine critiques. Speak boldly, live boldly. If you want to see change, whether on the inside or on the outside, model for the rest of us what you believe it means to be Christian. As Richard Rohr says, transformed people transform people. To all my friends who have said no, I hope that you find or have found a community which is refreshing, faith-building, and carries you on to the next leg of the journey. Please pray for those of us who have said yes. To those who have said or will eventually say yes, please stay healthy. Find a friend or group to confide in. Find spiritual support. Reach out and encourage those who've said no as well so that they know that you affirm their decision and still love and support them. Now, I love you all regardless of where you are in your unique situation. Just one final note. My upcoming book, How a 25-Year-Old Learned He Wasn't the Only One Going to Heaven, I talk about how I've answered this question up to this point in my life, as well as the larger question, do I stay Christian? You can follow my blog right here on YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, social media, to get updates on when this book will be released, because it'll expound upon some of these questions here in the future. All right, that'll be all. Hope you have a great day. God bless. See you in the next podcast.